All right, good morning and welcome to the Reading Agency Presents. We are delighted that you're able to join us this morning. The Reading Agency is a charity with the aim to empower people of all ages to read. Lots of people are already letting us know where they're from, so do use the chat function and do that, please. We'd love to hear where you're from. And it's great to hear that Pablo and Splash is really popular with Calypso class. That's fantastic. We're here for a morning that will see us travel back in time to the time of the dinosaurs, meeting an incredible penguin pairing and giving a behind-the-scenes glimpse of how stories can be told in words and pictures as part of graphic novels. So if you like the Bunny versus Monkey books, or The Investigators, or Peanut Butter and Crackers, you are in for a real treat with the fantastic Pablo and Splash. Regular attendees of this session will be familiar with Sheena Dempsey's work as the illustrator of Swapna Haddell's fantastic Dave Pigeon and Bad Panda series. Sheena is an illustrator and author from Cork in Ireland, and she's now living in Kent with her greyhound Jeremy. Sheena has won and been shortlisted for an incredibly impressive number of awards, including being shortlisted for Children's Books Ireland Book of the Year and winning the Sheffield Book Awards toddler category. Sheena will be introducing us to her new genre-busting and genuinely brilliant Pablo and Splash series, and will be showing us some drawing techniques, so make sure you've got your paper and pencils at the ready. There will also be a chance to ask questions, so if you have any questions, get those ready, and I will now very gladly hand over to Sheena Dempsey. Sheena, thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Jake. Hi, everybody. I'm Sheena Dempsey, and I am joined today by two very special friends, Pablo and Splash, who are the characters from my new graphic novel, Pablo and Splash. Pablo is the kind of penguin who loves things to stay the same. He loves Antarctica. He loves life on the ice. He loves krill. He loves his best friend Splash, and he just adores the weather. He loves the icy blasts of winds, and he loves huddling in a big penguin huddle. And he never wants things to change. He loves things to stay as they are. But Splash is a different kind of penguin. She's very adventurous. She's actually kind of fed up of the routine of life in Antarctica. She's sick of the weather. She's kind of getting sick of krill because that's kind of all they eat. Well, krill pops are what they eat, which are krill on a seaweed stick, and that's the local delicacy in Antarctica for penguins. And Splash is just a bit sick of all of it, and she wants to go on a holiday, not just a holiday far away from Antarctica. So she pulls Pablo on an adventure to find the sun. Because they want to go on a sunny holiday. They want to drink mocktails on the beach. They want to sun themselves. They want to feel sand between their toes instead of ice. But when they're looking for a way to get off Antarctica, they fall through a hole in the ice and they discover a secret underground laboratory. So I'm going to read you. I'm going to read from the book in a little while, but right now I'm going to tell you a bit more about myself. 1 second. So this is me. It's what we call a self-portrait. It's a drawing I did of myself. And I am an illustrator. And for this book, I'm an author as well of children's books. Lots of people know what an author does, but in case anyone doesn't know, the illustrator of a children's book is the person who draws the pictures. So I've illustrated a great number of books, I think about 35 books at my last count. And yes, so you might notice something unusual about my accent. It's because I'm not from the UK. I grew up in Ireland. I grew up in the 1980s in Ireland when dinosaurs roamed the earth. I'm just kidding, but that might sound like a long time ago to a lot of you. These are pictures of me growing up in Ireland. And actually someone was here from Cornwall. This photo of me in the Sand was taken in Cornwall. We came to Cornwall for our holidays when I was about 3 years old. This is my first day of school. So I was born in a place called Tipperary. I don't know if you've ever heard that word before. I lived there until I was 6, and then I moved to Cork. I grew up in Cork, and then I moved to study art in Dublin. But art is quite a big area, and I didn't really know the difference at the time between illustration, which is pictures that are drawn for kind of children's books or advertising or magazines, and fine art. So I ended up studying fine art, which wasn't exactly where my passion lay. So it took me a little while to figure out that illustration was really where my heart, my passion was. So I was about like 20, I went to Canada for a year, and I came back to Dublin, and I decided when I was about 27 that I was going to move to London to study for a master's in illustration. So that's just an extra kind of specialized qualification in illustration. So I then about 5 or 6 years ago, I moved out of London. I've been there for about 9 years, and I moved to Folkestone, which is where I am now. So Folkestone's in the very southeast corner of the UK, of England. And we're right by the sea. I love it here. When it's sunny, it's really nice. Obviously, there's a lot of rain as well, but this is my studio. It's at the top of my house. I make all of my drawings and my stories here, and I'm joined by somebody. You might notice somebody else in the picture who isn't of human form. My studio looks quite messy actually looking at it now, but that is a true reflection of what it looks like usually. This is beautiful Jeremy. Jeremy is my greyhound. He's usually well behaved, but he's very demanding around mealtime, so he gets a bit stroppy when it's time for his dinner, but otherwise he's quite well behaved, and he keeps me company in my studio when I'm working, and he's quite quiet, which is good. Now, when I went to do that qualification in illustration in my master's, I was making a lot of my drawings using traditional materials that you might use, such as pens, pencils, paper, paint. And this was the very first idea that I came up with on my master's. It was quite a dark idea. It was about a girl who wanted to get rid of her baby brother. She wanted to put him in the washing machine or flush him down the loo. And I was very lucky that I ended up finding a publisher for this idea, which was Walker Books. So Walker Books published my very first book. So I was about 29 when it came out. But they did end up asking me to change a lot of the ideas because they were a little bit dark for the picture book market for children at that age. So it did get softened a little bit. But these were my first children's books. They were picture books. And Bye Bye Baby Brother was the first one, and then the next one was called Bruno and Titch. But nowadays I tend to make a lot of my drawings using digital tools, meaning I use kind of Photoshop and iPad and Wacom. I don't know if you're familiar with any of these things, but basically it's drawings that are done on and for the computer. This is so that I can make changes when publishers need me to change any of the drawings. So I might draw a picture that I think is perfect, and I send it to the publisher, and they're like, "Oh, could you change that a little bit? It's not quite what we kind of asked for, or can we change that little bit?" And I can easily go to my digital tools and quickly change the drawing without having to redraw the entire drawing. So I made that change a few years ago, and it's helped me speed up a lot, which is really good because the world of children's books, the market is very, very fast. So you have to kind of keep up. So I have to draw quite quickly. These are some of my books that I've illustrated over the years. You might know Dave Pigeon or Yoga Babies. These are by different authors. These are picture books that I drew. They were for the Irish market. This was Mermaid School by Lucy Courtney. And then Bad Panda, which is also by Swapna Haddo. So these are also by the author of Dave Pigeon. You may have some of these in your library. And these were different to ordinary chapter books because they were told partly through graphic novels. So about 35 of the pages are actually told through comics. So this is how I got my practice in communicating through comics, drawing through comics. And we also, with Swap Now, we also had a World Book Day book last year, which was Dave Pigeon, Bookshop Mayhem. But what is different about a graphic novel from, you might know some of these covers. How does a graphic novel differ from like a chapter book where there's mostly kind of text and then some spot illustrations? This is my first graphic novel. With graphic novels, usually there are illustrations all over the page, and there are these kind of boundaries that contain the imagery, which we call in comics panels. And the dialogue takes place usually in what we call speech bubbles or thought bubbles, and you can have a lot of fun making your own comics. There are really no rules. You can just, use these kind of devices like called panels and thought bubbles and just go crazy. Now, this particular project for me all began as during the pandemic, because I'd never made comics before and I wanted to start making them. And I decided to create a webcomic with me as a penguin and my husband as a penguin. And it was like a funny webcomic that I put up on my Instagram, and I called it Isolation Penguin. A webcomic is simply a comic that you make that you put on the internet. So I made about 50 kind of episodes, and it was all about me and my husband as we kind of navigated the pandemic together. I had a dog at the time who was called Sandy, and I depicted her as a tortoise because I felt that they needed a pet to go through this pandemic together, and penguins with a dog, it wouldn't quite work because the dog would be towering over the penguins. So I gave them a tortoise, which I thought was a good pet because they move quite slowly as well. And these are just like comics that I made during that time for this webcomic. And I took those characters and I created a whole graphic novel series for children, which is based in Antarctica, but it's a time travel series. Now the characters, Pablo is a home bird. He likes to stay in his comfort zone. He worries that things will go wrong. He assumes the worst will happen, but he is good at planning. He's very meticulous. He's thoughtful, clever, and he's scientific. And he loves Antarctica. But it's good when you're making a story to have conflict where the characters are very different from one another. So that's why I made Splash. I exaggerated the differences between my husband and I made Splash really, really adventurous. She's an optimist. She doesn't really think before she acts. She's impatient and she gets bored easily. She doesn't consider consequences, and she relies on Pablo to bail her out of trouble when things go wrong. And she's very fast acting and high energy. This is Professor O'Brien. Now, we don't know whether she's a friend or an enemy. We'll have to read. You'll have to read the book to find out. I think some of you have already. Timebender is also a character. So the Timebender is how the penguins are able to time travel. And Professor O'Brien is the mad scientist, and this is her big project. This is her machine that she's been working on for a long time. But the Timebender, kind of like AI now, has almost got too intelligent, and it's got a bit of a life of its own. So it doesn't always listen to what it's told. It's unpredictable. So instead of the penguins want to go on a sun holiday, it brings them to the actual sun, which is very dangerous for two little penguins, obviously, who are used to life on the ice. It's way too hot on the sun. So this is them going on their way to the sun. Now, when you create drawings for publishers, you must create your roughs and your final artwork. So these are the roughs. And then this is the color art. So the publisher has a chance to ask me to make any changes. And then I proceed to color art. This is where Splash is they've reached their Cretaceous period, their beach holiday, but they don't realize they've traveled back all the way back to the Cretaceous period. So Splash thinks this is actually a whale. When it's actually, you might know, it's a part of the Mesosaur family. It's called a Tylosaurus. It's a marine reptile, obviously extinct now, but terrifying, the most deadly hunter of the prehistoric seas. This is where Pablo, the penny, finally drops because he's quite a smart cookie. Pablo realizes that they're actually they've traveled back in time. They're not at their luxury beach destination. And this is the color art. And this is where they first arrive. And then this is the color art. Now you might notice some differences between this spread and this one. On the bottom right, I've actually switched out them talking back and forth for a picture of the actual mocktails. And that's because I found that when I came to do the color art, it was too boring to have them talking. It was, the page looked boring, so I gave the splash of color on the bottom right. So that you make some decisions when you come to the final art that are different from your rough. So this is where they are, this is more kind of rough versus final art. This is where they have these pterodactyls or pterosaurs circling the skies above them, and she thinks that they're just birds. And this is where the dinosaur, Pablo is like wrestling with the dinosaur. She's hiding in the shrubbery. Now, these are, nobody has seen these pictures yet, so they're coming from the sequel, which is out in November. In this adventure, the Pablo and Splash go to the Ice Age. They go to visit the professor in her lab, and she's missing, so they must find her. So they go to the Ice Age. This is where they're kind of, this is where Splash is getting all muddled up in her time periods. And this is where they meet a saber-toothed tiger kitten, or cub kitten. And this is where we also meet some woolly mammoths. So now that we've done all of that, I'm going to do a little bit of a, I'm going to now, if you could all get your, or I'll do a reading. I'll read the first couple of chapters. Share screen. Okay, so I'll read the first chapter. So, okay, they're in Antarctica, they're huddling, and it's minus 58 degrees Celsius. This is so cold. You couldn't be cold, Splash. It's hot as a geezer in this huddle. Plus, hello, you're a penguin? A penguin whose beak is about to snap off. You know what we need right now, Pablo? A tasty krill pop? Well, obviously. Actually, could you go and get us those now? Now, as I was saying, what we need is, a holiday. A holiday? No, not a holiday. A holiday away from Antarctica, where the sun has heat and the sea isn't frozen over. Imagine warm sand between our toes instead of ice, and tropical fish that taste like every color of the southern lights. But Antarctica is paradise. Why ever would we leave this blissful utopia? Krill pops whenever we want, and if they don't take our fancy, a krill witch, or scrambled krill, or my chickhood favorite, regurgitated krill. Blah. To be honest, I'm getting kind of sick of krill. Sick of krill! Mother Nature's delicious ambrosia, how could you? Okay, the weather then. Isn't the weather just lovely here? With sub-zero temperatures, we have ideal conditions for ice sculpting. Pablo, I'll have to stop you right there. We will always have krill and ice and Antarctica, but we'll remember this holiday for the rest of our lives. Say you'll come, please? Well, where exactly are we going? I'm glad you asked. I was thinking Bali or Fiji or Barbados or Portugal. Splash, those are all crilly far away from here. How are we going to get there? But everywhere is crilly far away from this deserted lump of ice. They're in Antarctica, and look, everything's far away. You're the brains here. I was kind of hoping you'd figure out all the logistics. Yeah. Oh, it might be time for my favorite thing, a list. First, we'll lay out all the pros and cons of this holiday. Allow me. Pros: fun, warm, different, exciting. Okay, now the cons. I can't think of any. It could be dangerous, Splash. Don't be such a stick in the ice. We're made of tough stuff. And there's still the question of how we'll get there. Okay, fine, write that down. Pros: fun, warm, different, exciting. There's only one con, which is how to get there. It's kind of a big one, though. I think we have a clear winner. Okay, the holiday wins fair and square. Hooray! I still have no clue how we'll get off this island, though, Splash. Don't worry, you'll figure that bit out in no time. Pat, pat. Okay, now we're going to get busy with some drawing. So I'm going to, again, share my screen and then reshare to, so if you can all get your pencils and paper ready, I will show you how we draw. I'll start with Splash. Splash is quite fun to draw. So she's kind of in the shape of an egg with a flat bottom. So we'll start with the egg shape. So it's kind of like this. Now, if I'm going too fast, please let me know in the chat, and then Jacob, maybe you can let me know, because I tend to kind of go a bit too quickly. So I'm going to really try and slow down. But basically, draw your kind of flat egg like this. Now, because she's always freezing, she wears a hat when she's in Antarctica. So there's a curved line about 3/4 of the way up her body. Or her head or body, yes, her body. And there is a bobble on the top of her hat, which is just a wiggly ball. And there is the kind of brim of her hat, I suppose, is another line like this. And it has also got stripes. 1, 2. And I like to give the ball, the wiggly ball or the bobble, a little bit of texture. I do that by just having little kind of dashes to show that. And vertical lines along the brim. And let's do her eyes. Now, her eyes are basically 2 little dots, but I kind of like to leave a little bit of space within the dot to give it a little bit of expression or kind of a little bit of sparkle. I'll show you. Oh, it didn't really work that time. I'll try on the other one. Like that. And then her beak is right in the middle. It's just a shape like this. That's the top of her beak. And the bottom of it comes around like this. And she wears a scarf when she's in Antarctica, which is also a kind of a different kind of wiggly ball with underneath her chin or her beak, and it's like this. That's like the kind of where her scarf knots. And there's some kind of lines to show that it's knotted, like that. And the scarf wraps up around her side like this. And the same on the other side. Oops, sorry, I did that really wonky. And if you have a rubber, you can rub these bits out, but don't worry if you don't. Doesn't really matter. The rest of her scarf comes down here. That's one kind of one bit with another bobble at the end. And again, if you have an eraser, you can rub this bit out. So don't worry if you don't. And there's another part of the scarf that comes down in the exact same way, but a little bit shorter, with a ball at the end, or a bobble. And I'll also give a little bit of texture by doing these little kind of dashes. To show that it's made of kind of material. And her scarf has a chevron or a zigzag pattern, which is kind of fun. You can just do it like this. Zigzag, 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 zigzag. So that goes all the way around. And you kind of can turn it upwards as you're coming around the corner so that it looks like it's wrapping around. And it's the same on the other side. Again, you can turn the pattern upwards kind of. And it doesn't really matter how you draw the zigzag in the middle. I just kind of like just suggest it. And I'll draw some on this part as well. And on the other one too. Now, she's missing something. What is she missing? She's missing her flippers. So I will give her one flipper waving because she's a kind of a friendly penguin. So just a line like this. I have drawn her body a bit wonky to begin with because yeah. So anyway, I'm just gonna fix this bit, sorry. Oh, I made it worse. See, even illustrators make mistakes. Anyway, so one flipper is waving, and we'll draw the other one kind of by her side. And one of the last things is her feet, her little bird feet. So I draw this by doing a line that goes around like this, and one more like right next to it, and another. And then I bring the ankle back and the heel, it goes up like that. And then you kind of join the toes together. And you do the same on the other side. Three toes on each foot. And she has little claws at the bottom of her toes. So let's fill those in. And the very last thing is her kind of penguin markings, which are, I kind of made them up. On real penguins, the black part kind of comes over the eyes, but I wanted us to be able to see. So I kind of made up where the kind of markings go. And I have them kind of going this way. They come all the way around. There we go. Oops, one sec. Now that eye is still annoying me a little bit, so I'm going to draw it again. Sorry. There we go. That's better. And that is how I draw Splash. She looks like she's ready for an adventure, doesn't she? I'll draw her saying something. And you can kind of draw a few little kind of dashes below to show that she's kind of standing on something, probably ice. And that is how we draw Splash. Now I'm going to move on to Pablo. Pablo is a different shape completely to Splash, and that is so that we can tell them apart. But it's also because in character design, which is when you kind of make characters and illustrations, there's a thing called shape variety, and that just means that your shapes, if you're drawing a set of characters, they should all be very identifiable just looking at their shapes. So Pablo is has got a long neck with 3 tufts at the top for his hair. And he has a pear-shaped body. So his body's a totally different shape to Splash. It comes all the way down and in a kind of pear shape. And we'll draw him with one flipper to the side. And let's draw the other hip flipper on his hip. And he needs his beak. So his beak is kind of midway, we'll start it here. And it's much bigger than Splash's because I wanted them to be quite different. And the bottom of it comes under this way. Again, if you've got a pencil, you can rub this bit out, but don't worry if you don't. And let's do his eyes. And in the same way I did them with Splash, I like them to have a little bit of kind of expression. No, I don't like that. And he needs his feet. So in the same way we drew Splash's feet, we'll start with his little 1 toe, 2 toes, 3 toes. We'll join them all together. And his heel comes back around like this and like that. And the same again on this side. 1, 2, 3. And the heel goes up there. Now he needs his claws as well. We'll fill those in. 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Now that looks a bit funny actually. But anyway, let's keep going. It's all good. See, I'm very critical of my own drawings a lot of the time. But yeah, it's very hard. Let's draw his tail. And we'll do his markings, again, which I totally made up. So if there's any penguin experts, which I'm sure there are because there's an Emperor Penguins class, you'll be able to see that these are not quite how a penguin, how its kind of black part goes, but it's all good. And that is how I draw Pablo. And we'll also draw him saying hello. And we can also draw a little bit of a shadow to ground him. And that is it for Pablo and Splash. Is anybody, I hope you were able to keep up with that and I wasn't going too quickly. I'm going to read you another chapter from the book because I think we just have a few more minutes. So just while you are finishing up your drawings, maybe I can just read you another little bit. So where did we leave them? They were okay. So Pablo is trying to figure out a way for them to get off Antarctica. And Splash is not being very helpful. So he says, okay, let me think. We can't swim there because it's too far. And she says, and we can't fly there because we can't fly. Great point. Thanks. We could sail if we had a boat or a raft. And what could we use to make a raft? Oh, this is taking forever. Shush, Splash, you're breaking my concentration. Oh, I know. You've done it? Great, let's go. Come on. Not yet, but I have thought of a game to help us brainstorm. Groan. Patience, Splash. These things can't be rushed. Okay, are you ready for the game? I was born ready. Okay, the point of the game is to answer fast. I can do that. Okay, when I say penguin, you think cold. Okay, when I say cold, you think Antarctica, obviously. And when I say Antarctica, you think scientists. Scientists. Of course, the scientists will know how to make a seaworthy raft. But they don't understand Penguish. I don't think they're very bright. There are ways of making yourselves understood. Penguin charades? Exactly. And now they're running up the hill and running down the hill. Whoops, up you get. Almost there, pant, pant. Oh, good, because I've got a stitch. We've only been running for 2 minutes. Probably all that krill you had earlier. Excuse me, Pablo! No, can you hear me? Hold on, I'm coming. Ah! Pablo? Stop! Doink. Here. Fell through the hole in the ice. You saw me. Yes, but why have you stopped here? Oh, no reason. I thought I'd pause here and think about life. I'm stuck, obviously. It's narrower down this end. Well, we can't go back up. Why not? Gravity? Oh, I'll have to push you out. But my dignity. Never mind about that. Suck in your belly. Squeeze. Whoosh. Pop. Oh my God. What is this place? I don't think I like it. So that is how they end up in the secret underground laboratory owned by this mad scientist called Professor O'Brien, who is this is her time bender, and this is really where all of the adventures of Pablo and Splash begin. So I think stop sharing. Okay, got it. So I think we have time for some questions. I'll hand over to Jake.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much for that. And it was really magical watching you draw Splash and Pablo and seeing those sort of come to life and all the expressions that you gave. If anyone did find that was a bit fast, people work at their own pace. No, it was perfect.
Okay.
You will be able to watch it again after the session. We'll be putting a recording up onto YouTube. So we do have some questions for you now, Sheena. And the first one is from 3A Springfield Juniors. And they're asking, how long does it take you to write and illustrate a book?
Well, I think for graphic novels in particular, they're a lot of work. They're a lot of work. So there's a lot of art in this book. So there's 240 pages of color art. So it took me quite a long time, but I think I worked pretty fast because it might sound like really long to you guys because you probably draw way faster than I do, but it took me 7 months to do the color art for Pablo and Splash, and it took me 7 weeks to do the rough drawings that I showed you and the text. So all in all, it took like maybe 8 or 9 months for the whole book, which is quite fast for this amount of work. My very first book that I showed you with the baby, Bye Bye Baby Brother, that actually took ages because I didn't know what I was doing. It was my very first book. So I had so many attempts to kind of get it right that it took me a couple of years to make it. So it just depends really.
That's fantastic. Thank you. Yeah, and I think there is such a huge amount of work in a graphic novel, all
Yeah,
those individual panels to do. Calypso class are asking, do you prefer writing or illustrating?
it's a really good question. I think I'm primarily an illustrator. That was what I really initially where my passion was, but I really have I find in graphic novels that I find the perfect form of storytelling, which incorporates both words and pictures, but primarily pictures. I think that is where I'm strongest. So I really I love it. I love
Fantastic.
graphic
And do you
novels.
think by working on other people's, by illustrating other people's stories, do you think that's helped you learn about storytelling yourself with your own
Oh,
writing?
100%, 100%. I
Yeah.
feel like absolutely like you learn to yeah, I learned a lot along the way from writers and from reading other authors' books as well. Like yeah, kind of scrutinizing how they have done it. Yeah, for sure.
Brilliant. Jake from Cornwall is asking what the first book you had published was.
That was the book called Bye Bye Baby Brother. So it was a book about a little girl who wants to get rid of her baby brother. That was my very first book, and it was a picture book, so it was for younger kids, sort of 3, 4, 5.
Brilliant, thank you. And there's quite a number of questions coming in that are interested in what inspires you and where you get your ideas from.
It's a very broad question, but in this case, I guess where it all started for me was with the web comic, which was me kind of trying to break into this world of comics that I was enjoying as a reader but hadn't really explored before. So the initial idea was that it was a diary web comic, and then I had the challenge of turning that into a very imaginative, fun-filled, exciting world for children. So that was a real kind of leaping, like there was a huge gap because one was a very domestic setting where I was using the kind of daily occurrences as ideas, and the other was sort of totally making it up and trying to make it all work together. And you know, their base was in Antarctica, and they were going to go on all these adventures, and who are the characters? So it was a big challenge, I think. But like the ideas, it's hard to explain, but like really by just brainstorming a lot of the time, like thinking what if, which is kind of like, you know, what comedians do with improv, which is like yes and like what if this happened and then what if that happened, and then kind of really getting all these rough ideas out and then streamlining your ideas until they all make sense, I think. I hope that
Brilliant,
answers your question.
thank you. So Calypso class have got a really interesting question. They're asking whether it's difficult to illustrate books that are written by other authors and what kind of communication you have with them.
That's a good question. I think the role of the publisher is to kind of manage that relationship so that you have the publisher as your kind of, you know, filter. So they kind of they're really more in communication with you than the author is. So you take your lead from what the publisher wants. So they will be like, you know, this is what we kind of want for the cover, and it will have been via the author's kind of vision as well. But when it comes to you, you know, they have a brief for you, which is where they have like an assignment basically as an illustrator, you know, where they kind of tell you for the cover, like this is what we're thinking. Then you kind of have throw a few ideas out as well and come up with some options. So it's quite a collaborative kind of process. But yeah, you're not working as closely with the author as some people might think.
Yeah, thank you. I think that often surprises people.
Yeah.
Miss Thou is asking whether you have an idea of how many Pablo and Splash books there will be in the series.
Well, the second one is coming in November, and we're going to the Ice Age, and then there's a third one too. So that should be coming. I'm not sure when. Probably about 9 months after that. And we'll have to see then to see if there will be more. I hope so, but we'll see. It depends on how well they sell. Yeah, usually.
Fantastic. I've got a related question for you with that. So if you had access to your own time bender, what period of history would you choose to go to and why?
Oh my God, that's such a good question. You know what? I just read this book that I thought was brilliant by Sarah Crossan. which was called Where the Heart Should Be, and it's set in famine era Ireland, so like 1847 around that time. And I think I'd love to just go and just see what it was like in Ireland at that time. I mean, yeah, it would have been pretty dark, but I think it'd be really, really interesting. So at the moment, that's what I'm interested in, just myself reading. But yeah.
Brilliant, thank you. We've had quite a number of people asking how long you've been an author and illustrator.
So my first book came out, was it 2013? Officially, actually, not that long, probably like, well, it's kind of long, 11 years. So yeah, it feels like longer, but yeah, I've been doing it for about 11 years. Yeah.
Excellent, thank you. And we've got an interesting question about whether if you could pick a character to be from one of your books, which character would it be and why?
Well, I think I relate most strongly to Splash because I kind of am Splash because she's kind of based on me. So I relate and I connect with her probably most strongly. I think so I'd probably say Splash.
Yeah, brilliant. And another question, how old were you when you discovered that you were so good at drawing?
I guess it was really my teacher who discovered it before I did. I think I was like 7. So I was in what we call first class in Ireland, and the teacher identified, oh, she quite likes drawing, you know. So I think my mum and my parents were very good, and they really encouraged that, and they supported me kind of along the way, which was good. I think you know, when it came to going to art college or deciding what to do, I think there were suggestions that I would do something a bit more kind of um you know, sensible, or you know, but then I was like, really, I know this is the only thing I want to do. So they kind of, it was allowed, kind of supported along the way, basically. Yeah.
Brilliant. And I think that passion really does shine through in your work.
Thank you.
We've got quite a practical question here. What device do you use to do your drawings on?
So at the moment I'm using this, I don't know if you can see it. I can lift it up. It's a Wacom tablet. So this is like another screen. It's connected to my computer, and I have this digital pen, and then I can draw. And I actually look at the screen rather than the Wacom, even though there is a screen on it, because I find the bigger screen is I can more see what's going on. So yeah, and then I use my iPad for roughs, so things are on a smaller screen, you know. So that's how I kind of work at the moment.
Brilliant, thank you. So our next question is around what books you enjoyed reading yourself when you were a child.
I remember reading. I mean, I was obsessed with Roald Dahl and Enid Blyton. I mean, they're kind of obvious ones, but like at the time, I guess they must have dominated the market a lot because I was obsessed with them. Anything by Roald Dahl, I adored. I remember in particular, my favorite 3 were the BFG, The Witches, and Matilda, which I just read and read and read. And I still have my old copies from the 80s in my kind of upstairs. And as well, the Enid Blyton books, I just loved them as well. I loved the Five Find Outers. I know they were kind of a kind of lesser known, you know, group, but I loved those guys. I loved the Famous Five. I loved all those kind of ones like the more obscure ones like Mr. Pink Whistle, and there were just loads of these funny ones that she made. I just read The Wishing Chair, all those ones. I love them all. Yeah.
Brilliant. Yeah, good to hear that you're a fan of the Five Fine Dances and Dog. I'm
Oh
definitely
yeah,
those mystery stories too.
I love those. Yeah. Lots
Um,
of invisible ink, and like I loved when they did all those little detective bits. Yeah.
Absolutely, and finding clues and piecing together the puzzles.
Yeah.
So our next question is, what advice would you give to anyone who's interested in becoming an illustrator themselves?
Draw every day. I think that is the biggest tip. And like, I think draw every day and don't. I think we can be very hard on ourselves, including myself. Like I'm my own worst critic, which means that I'm a very high standard for myself, but I also feel like I could do so much better, you know. Basically, I'm just hard on myself when I'm drawing, and I think just try to block out that voice that's telling you that it's not good enough, because you are good enough, and if you keep practicing you'll get better. It's not about, you know, innate genius, it's about like hard work, really. So if you really love drawing, keep practicing and keep drawing every day, and you'll get there. Do you need to go? Can I just? I see a question. Do you need to go to art college to become an illustrator? I think I've changed my mind about that in recent years because I think it's becoming increasingly unaffordable for people to study art. I just think it's crazy the fees that the colleges are asking for. So I think right like now there are so many options. If you wanted to become an illustrator and you were very disciplined, there are loads of online courses. There's all these online schools that are a fraction of what the college tuition is. So I think there are definitely options if it's not, if if the fees look astronomical to you, there are other options for sure.
Brilliant, thank you. We've got some character related questions now. And one of those is, how did you come up with the names Pablo and Splash, and is it hard to name your characters?
I think I wanted to have because Antarctica is like southern hemisphere. I think Pablo seems like a good one, and he's kind of Pablo suits his character as well. Like I used to work with a guy called Paolo, and he was very similar to Pablo, and the name just had that kind of resonation for me. And then Splash, I wanted to have her have a non actual name, like a more of a kind of onomatopoeic name in a way, because it makes a splash wherever she goes.
Brilliant. And another character related question, do you have a favorite character to write about or illustrate?
I have, yeah, I think Splash and Pablo and Splash basically at the moment. But I think in the future, maybe I started a kind of a diary for my dog Jeremy a while ago, and I'd like to continue with that. I saw someone asking if Jeremy likes my books. Well, I'm hoping that someday I can put Jeremy in a book. That would be really fun.
Yeah, that does sound a lot of fun. Do you read your books to Jeremy? Going back to that question about whether he likes your books.
I don't think he doesn't express much interest, but yeah, I remember one time I got books from the publisher, and my dog at the time, Sandy, who was another greyhound, took one and ate it. So she enjoyed my books.
Brilliant. And another question, do you think you'll always sort of write and illustrate books? Is that what your main interest is at the moment?
I hope so. I still feel as passionate, if not more so, than as when I started. I don't feel like I'm going to stop anytime soon. As long as things hold up, like when you're drawing like 12 hours a day, your body can start breaking down. So hopefully I'll continue to be able to operate for a long time. We'll see.
Sure. And which authors and illustrators do you particularly admire, and why?
I feel like right now we're in such a golden age. Like the amount of talent out there is just jaw-dropping, and I think it's hard to stand out, but like I've such admiration for fellow illustrators, that what they can do, they're just incredible. Like I love the work of just like Claire Powell is amazing. She's so talented. Tor Freeman, I'm a big fan of. I love her work. Like Stephen Lenton's work, I love his drawings. His sense of design is incredible. And what else? There's so many. There's just the talent out there is incredible. Fiona Lumbers is incredible. Illustrators are just, there's so many good ones, and so many more on the way. Yeah, they're great.
Definitely. A huge thank you for joining us this morning and for giving us such a brilliant behind the scenes kind of insight into how you create characters, how to create that drama between the characters that sort of powers stories. And we're getting some lovely messages of thanks and how much your children have loved their creations and creating their own characters too. So a massive, massive thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks everyone for joining.